We are off. Okay. Okay, guys. Welcome back to Let's Get Freaky podcast. I am pumped. I am super excited because I'm bringing back one of my favorite people, Mark Olly. We recently had him on. He's been on twice recently, and I absolutely love him, man. He's the coolest dude, and he sent me a list of topics that we can get into on the show. So there is hours of us talking, hopefully, coming, and this is another one. Brother, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky, man. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Absolute pleasure.
You've literally become one of my favorite people.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I'm
And
not just saying that, man.
well, at the moment, you're the only guy I'm doing in the UK, so yeah,
There you go.
fantastic.
Yeah,
We should,
well, as I say, hours. I mean, the
yeah,
list you sent me of topics that you've looked into and you've
yeah,
researched,
yeah.
it's incredible. Now, for people that haven't
Mm.
heard the previous two episodes, and I don't know where they've been if they haven't, go back and listen. They're absolutely fascinating stuff. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get
Yeah.
into.
Okay. I'm an archaeologist. I was a professional musician for 21 years. I'm a drummer, if you can call that a musician, because that's what they say about bands, isn't it? You know, three guys and a drummer, three musicians and a drummer. So anyway, I did that for a long, long time. Still in a rock band. I write loads of books, which are available on Amazon. I think there's 9 of them out there in total. I do television whenever I get the chance. I had my own series back at the beginning of the 2000s, 2005 to I think 2011 was the last time Sky ran it, and I've got a bit of news on that which I can give you at the end because I think
Oh,
I might be returning to television
let's
shortly.
go.
So do you want me to tell? I'll put it in now. Why the hell not?
Yeah, that's cool.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sworn to absolute secrecy about this, so I'll just tell everybody like I usually do. Um, they've shot a 6-part pilot series called Beyond Myth, which we did I don't know 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it's my gut feeling is it's kind of another Ancient Aliens. It's going to go in that direction. The 6 episodes they shot, I'm on all of those, but they deal with things like the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, Atlantis, crystal skulls. You know, so it's the whole of that. And I've got a really strong feeling this thing's going to take off. So I can't tell you exactly when, but it'll be one of the Sky related channels. So it might be Blaze or Quest or Sky History, or that's kind of where it's going. So I'm back on TV again. I can't remember what else I could tell you.
Let's go.
Come find me on Facebook. You know, it's all on there.
Yeah, that's fantastic news.
Yeah,
Wow. Oh man, I mean they're all my favorite channels as well. That's like the channels that I watch most of the time, what you just mentioned there.
yeah.
Awesome stuff, man. Topics that we love, topics that I know the Freaky fam love. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
amazing news, man.
Yeah. And it's good they're dealing with those topics as well because some of the programs haven't really taken any of them seriously, or they
Hmm.
just pop up as like an extra bit. You know, you don't
Yeah.
really get into it. Well, these guys are they're totally into it, and the panel they've chosen, most of them are experts. You know, they're scientists and philosophers and professors and archaeologists, and so it's the real deal. You know, it's the proper. So yeah, we've been waiting a long time for this. So I'm really hoping
That is great news,
it's gonna
brother.
take
That
off.
is
Yeah.
awesome. Because obviously we spoke last time. You had Lost Treasures, which is a huge show,
Yeah.
and we talked about bringing that back. We want to bring that
Yeah.
back as well.
Yeah. Let's do it. Uh,
You're
I was on Ancient Aliens as well. I was on season 19, episode 2, Crop Circles. So it'd be nice
yeah.
if anybody out there wants me back on. Go and
Yeah,
email them.
absolutely. Absolutely, man. And Ancient Aliens, what a show as well. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's played a big part in my personal journey with this stuff as well. I watched that show for years before I even thought about doing a podcast as well, and it's an amazing show, still going strong.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, oh, I love it, man. That's so cool. So last time you was on, you spoke about King Arthur, and that was 45 years of research. I mean,
Yeah.
your knowledge is incredible in so many different topics, man. As I said,
In other words, you mean I'm old?
no, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Well
Uh,
researched and fascinating stuff.
hmm.
Today, I mean, we're going to get into another very interesting topic, which is
Hmm.
again a topic that I know little bits about, and I'm sure the people listening will know little bits about. But I'm excited to hear your research because I know you deep dive into this,
Oh
and
yeah.
that is the Templars,
Yeah.
which is Fascinating. I mean, my knowledge is really Assassin's Creed, as I
Oh,
said
don't
to you
knock
before.
it. Don't knock it. Apart from the size of the red cross that they stick on Templars, which is wrong. Apart from that, Assassin's Creed's pretty good. I've gone running all
Ah,
the way around Venice in that game
oh,
before now.
it's
So, yeah.
such a good game.
Yeah, it
Such a
is.
My favorite one actually is I think it's the third one, and it's in Massachusetts, in Boston.
Oh,
And
right. You've
I
gone for the
love
American one.
I
Right.
love
Yeah.
that. I love that game,
Yeah.
man. I still play that to this day sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think the Pirates one's a good laugh as well. But anyway,
yeah,
we're getting off topic a bit here.
yeah, the Vikings one, and
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
and the London one
Yeah.
as well. I love the London one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we are getting up to.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
when it comes to the Templars, where did your research with the Templars begin?
okay. This is a fab story. You're going to love this. As an archaeologist, I basically got into semi-professional archaeology as a teenager because I got wind of the fact that there was a dig taking place about 4 or 5 miles away from where I am here, on this big priory. It was called Norton Priory. So me and a mate of mine were both like 14. We thought, right, we'll go and have a look at this place, and see what's going on. So we got on the canal, and the canal runs right past the priory. So we walked all the way down there and just kind of walked into the site. And then this bloke, who was obviously very official, stopped us and he went, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "Well, we've come to see what you're doing. You got all this, like, everything open, holes, digging, and all the rest of it. We've got a huge interest in archaeology." He went, "Well, how did you get past the guards with the dogs?" And we're like, "We never even saw the guards with the dogs." So clearly they weren't bothered about the canal. They didn't think anyone would come in. It turns out this guy was in charge of the dig, and he just said to us, he said, "Well, you're here now. We do take volunteers. There's a trowel, get digging." So I ended up working on Norton Priory for about, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that, on and off. Um, and basically, Norton Priory was founded by Hugh de Payens, the Grand Master of the Templars, in 1127, as it turns out, when he came to this country. It wasn't Cistercian, it was Augustinian, and all the early foundations are Augustinian. It was one of the first priories ever to use Romanesque architecture. So you're way, way back, right at the very beginning. This is firing the starting pistol. And at one point, somewhere in my digging career, I dusted off my hands like that, and I picked up my butties, because there was no health and safety back then. And in front of me, stretching away, were 167 skeletons. Just that was it. We had the whole priory, virtually the whole priory open, which was standard practice then because it was the easiest way to deal with a site of that scale. So when I'm eating me butties, I'm probably literally eating the dust from decayed Templars, it's all Templars. It's all Templars, Hospitallers, Augustinians, because it stayed Augustinian right to the very end of its history. It was one of the only Augustinian abbeys in the whole of Britain when it was dissolved in the 1500s. So it's an amazing site to start on. And that really fires you up. I mean, I was still working on it when I think I'd got into my late teens, early 20s. I was still there, but it had everything, literally everything, all the mysteries associated with the Templars just kind of, laid out before me. They're still very they're still very touchy about Norton Priory, actually. If you go in there and mention Templars, they'll probably show you the door, but it
Really?
obviously is. Yeah. Well, it's a crossover between Wales and England that was never supposed to happen. It was a very strange foundation indeed, associated with the
Wow.
barons of Halton. So that was my baptism of fire into Templars. And from that point on, I just kept researching. There's a very strong possibility they're in my family tree, which we discovered when we did that through DNA and research. Certainly back in the 1300s, we were in the order of the Knights of the Round Table, which was Black Prince, Edward the Black Prince's order. So we've got connections. That is a rebranding of Templars. That's what that is. So clearly that's where we were at. Um, and I joined the Templars myself a few years ago. Not the Masonic ones, the independent British order, which we can come to later. You can ask me about the different,
Mhm.
what's around nowadays.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's in my DNA.
Wow.
It's kind of what I am. Um,
Wow. So you've eaten the dust of Templars and you are a Templar. That
yeah,
is wild.
yeah.
Man,
Hereditary Templar. I've paid my dues for the Templars. And like you say, I've accidentally imbibed their DNA. Breathed them in, I would imagine.
Wow.
No face masks or white suits or any of that. I mean, could have
Yeah.
all died of the plague for all we knew. But we just got on with it.
Yeah. And not many people
That's
can say that. That is for sure.
Well, that's what it was like in the 1970s. That was
Yeah.
archaeology learning its trade. It was developing back then.
Wow, man.
Fantastic, though. Fantastic thing to be involved
That is amazing, man.
in.
And see why it sort of led you on to the journey that you've been on, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it was the largest monastic excavation. I think it still is the largest monastic excavation in Europe.
Wow.
Huge, enormous thing.
Yeah. So with the Templars, is it kind of like the King Arthur story where there's different versions? There's controversy, or is it a pretty much set out story that can't really be touched or changed?
No, there's two levels. Okay, there's one strand which is history. It's stuff that has been found either archaeologically or through looking at what records have survived, of which there are very few, or things that are literally written into buildings and sites, and you can build up a very solid, hard, factual understanding of them. But then there is another level, and this is the one that really makes them interesting, which is the kind of the religious, the legends, the what were they up to, what did they own, where did they go, what did they do. Like there's a whole shed load of evidence now that's coming out that the Templars were in South America, which is just before Columbus, well before, hundreds of
Wow.
years before, and that's new. That is new information that's only just coming out.
Yeah.
So there's a whole level of mysteries. What did they own? Where did they go? What were they up to?
Yeah.
You're into Da Vinci Code territory,
Let's
really.
go. Let's go.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we spoke before, and people that listen to this show, and a lot of people out there will kind of agree that our history is a bit skew if that's a
yeah,
nice way of putting it. There's
yeah,
the winner's side of the story always stays,
yeah,
and our history is very much a mystery in a lot of ways. Even when you look back at the last couple of years, you can see how mainstream media changes
yeah,
narratives, and
yeah.
you're like, what? Hang on, that just completely contradicts what. And I don't like getting into politics and stuff because it is I don't trust any of them, to be honest.
No, no,
But we can see how in the last couple of years they changed narratives and things like that. So you can imagine when you're talking hundreds of years, how much it can be messed with and manipulated and
yeah.
changed, and
Uh,
why it gets confusing.
Well, what I found at the because I was at a Templar conference 2 weekends ago down in Hereford, and what I found was the problem that most people seem to have is they don't think like the people did back then, and that's the problem. So an awful lot of the material that we have got gets misinterpreted. They have no idea what it is. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. For example, there's a carvings very often appear of a face, which can sometimes be a green man with horns. And of course, everybody jumps on that and goes, well, they worship the devil. It's devil worship. Anything with horns is the devil. Which, if you study your medieval stuff, if you're a medievalist, you'll realize that that is how they depicted Moses with horns of fire. So chances are that face with very small horns, not obviously not whopping great big ones, but that's probably Moses. It probably represents something biblical because that's how they thought back then. And there's other simple things like, if you go back to the 11, 12, 1300s, most people, the vast majority of people, did not have access to a Bible. It didn't exist. Yes, various races like the Jews, the Hebrews, Egyptians, Copts, they all had a collection of scrolls, which is what formed the Bible, but
Hmm.
it wasn't printed. It wasn't generally available. In medieval structures, they have a thing called a rood screen, and the public, if you like, everybody else is on one side of that in the body of the church, and the ministers, the monks, the priests, the abbots are on the other side of the screen. That's where you need to be to get your access to your biblical material is on the other side of the screen. So the vast majority of people didn't have easy access. And that throws up a huge, we're on this side of it now. We've got everything. We have everything. It's all publicly available. But when you go back to medieval times, that is a mystery.
Hmm.
It is a strange area of study that you would only go into if you were connected to the monastic community. And
Hmm.
most people just forget that. So there is a danger, that we engineer stuff backwards and make stuff up, and it
Hmm.
does happen a lot. It
Yeah.
does happen a lot.
It's impossible for us to put our perspective in the world we live in now, a
Yeah,
thousand years ago, even 100 years ago, really.
yeah,
The world we
yeah.
live in now is so different. Even like 10, 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah,
We're in a different world now. Social media, we've
yeah,
all got
yeah,
cell phones, we're all on
yeah.
all online. It's different, man. It's a completely different world.
Yes, it is indeed. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I'd like to go to like the start of the Templars that we know
Okay.
of, where the history began with the Templars.
Okay. Officially, they start in, let me get this right, 1118. In the 1118, basically, the Pope kind of rubber stamps the order. Actually, it might be 1127 when he rubber stamps it. 1118 is when they apply. So you start getting a paper trail in 1118 where you can see these guys getting together. This is what we want to do. There is a slight hint that the Knights of Christ were forming in 1114, which could be proto Templars. The main reason for that is because the Knights Hospitaller had already started. They started in the end of the 1000s, around about 1096, 97, 98, 99, when they were involved in conflict because they needed a hospital. They needed people to treat injured knights. So basically, the Templars are riding in on the back of that. Um, the real mystery is that they go for this thing called the Al Aqsa Mosque, which is Solomon's stables. It's this enormous aircraft hangar sized thing joined on the side of the Temple Mount, which is in Jerusalem, which is where they get the name Templars from, because they're right adjacent to the temple. But there's only 9 of them, and there's only 4 horses. It's where you get the, 2 knights on 1 horse seal, because it represents poverty. I mean, a horse back then was, as much as buying a top range car like a Porsche 911. Not everyone could afford a horse. But the thing is, and this is what starts the mystery, there are tens of thousands of Islamic warriors that are likely to attack the Templars and anybody that comes in as pilgrims. But the purpose of the Templars is given as protectors of pilgrims. So they're on the road from Jafar to Jerusalem protecting pilgrims, and there's only 9 of them. So clearly they're up to something. That's
Hmm.
not the reason why they're there at all.
Hmm.
Um, Up to about 20 years ago, if you went on a guided tour, the guides that took you into the mosque would show you what is referred to as the Templar Tunnel. There is actually a tunnel where they start digging under the platform and they're heading in the direction of where Solomon's Temple used to stand, which is just beyond the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock is next to where the temple used to be. So they're clearly heading for tunnels, basements, anything, cavities below where Solomon's Temple, used to stand. By 1127, when they are recognised as an order, and they're given the cross pate, which is the red cross on a white background, they're granted that. By that point, they've clearly found something because they're becoming rich and powerful. So it could be, some people say, oh, was it the Ark of the Covenant? Was it gold, from the temple? Was it scrolls that had secret information in that they took back and that's in the Vatican Library? There's a lot of speculation as to what it might have been, but definitely they achieved whatever goal archaeologically, because they're the first archaeologists in the world. Whatever was at the end of the tunnel they were after, they got it. They actually achieved it, and then the order starts to increase. You start to see sort of more of them
Hmm.
uh, after 1127. But that's when they
Interesting.
started. First
Interesting.
crusade, and then they get the Red Cross in time for the second crusade.
So whatever they came across gave them the wealth to grow.
Yeah, wealth and power.
Whoa.
Um, but they must have had some idea what they were doing before they took over the Al Aqsa Mosque, because clearly it's a plan, where they cite themselves, what they call themselves, what they then set about doing, and ultimately where it leads them. They're definitely up to something. There's no doubt about it. But
Wow, man.
nobody knows exactly what. So the whole order actually begins with a mystery.
Yeah.
They are a mystery to begin with.
Is it possible that that's still being protected, whatever that is?
Well, if it's the scrolls, which I sort of lean a bit more towards that, something like a library on the scale of the Dead Sea Scrolls. If that found its way back to the Vatican, there's 3.5 miles of Dexian shelving in that library, and it would take 100 scholars about 400 years to sort it out. So this kind of, oh, there's a conspiracy, the Vatican never releases anything, that isn't true. They have got scholars working in there trying to get through this enormous backlog of, 2,000-year backlog of stuff. Which is interesting because fairly recently, I think it was 2007, they found court records where the Pope at the time had actually re-examined the case of the Templars in 1380 and said, there's nothing wrong with them. They're fine. We should never have dissolved them. So that kind of opens a whole can of worms as well. But that's at the other end from
Yeah.
what we're talking now. If it was the Ark of the Covenant, legend has it somewhere in the 1200s that white, red-headed Scottish people wearing tartan turned up in Ethiopia with this box, and that actually it's in Church of St Mary's, Ethiopia. Axum. It's at Axum, which again is quite believable. But maybe the two things are completely separate. Maybe they did both. Who knows? Or gold. Riches, because the Romans didn't get everything out of the temple. The priests will have managed to hide something,
Hmm.
and the temple treasury was known to be in the basement, if you like, of what then was Herod's temple, but it was on the same site as Solomon's temple. So yeah, who knows? Interesting way to
It
start.
is, man. Your knowledge is
Yeah,
incredible, man. These dates and these names
yeah.
that you remember, it blows my mind. I struggle remembering my kids' birthdays. So, so, so the
Well,
fact you can remember
the
all these
funny thing is,
dates.
so do I. I can tell you all this about the Templars. Can't remember anything else. I suppose it depends what's in there.
Someone asked me the other day, they was like, "How old are your kids?" I've got three kids, and I'm like, "I got a 13, a 6, and I'm just forgetting." I'm like,
Yeah, I'm the same. And I've got four sons to remember and four
"Wow,
adopted daughters. So it's
oh
a bit.
wow,
Oh, and four grandkids as well now. So
oh man,
my diary is full of notes. That's like these bright.
birthdays."
That's it. Yeah, that's the only way we can do
So,
it.
so the original Templars.
Yeah,
Did you say there was nine? Did you say
yeah.
nine?
There's nine of them, nine knights,
Do,
and then a
do we
few.
know who they are? Like,
Yes, yes, yeah. We
ah,
we we've got this big long list. From memory, I can't tell you who all nine of them were. What I can tell you is that most of them originated from France, with a bit of a leaning towards Spain. And obviously, because of the church back then, there's only one church. I mean, we call it the Catholic Church, but technically it's the medieval church, which there was only one of. That meant they had connections drifting in the direction of Italy, because obviously that's where the popes are. Um, Clairvaux, which is in France, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, they actually chose him to write up the Templar rules because you needed somebody who was monastic. If you're dealing with monks, and you want to write up like a rule of how you're going to run your organization, you need someone to do it. Bernard is interesting though because he believes equally that God is male and female, that God is actually both. So in the church, the medieval church, he's the guy that champions the female cause. And that runs right through the whole of Templar history. They're very even
interesting.
handed. When they shut down some of the preceptories in southern France, when they closed them all down when the order came to an end, which happened in 1314, female knights outnumbered male knights 2 to 1. And that's in the
Wow.
records. That is actually in the records of southern France. Well, the reason for that is that, a lot of the male knights had been off on, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11 different crusades. So over 300 odd years, all the nobles have been wiped out. Everything they had then was inherited by their partners. And that process over a long period of time meant that actually the female knights were quite highly respected. But they go all the way back to the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons had female
Hmm.
fighting ladies.
Hmm.
So it wasn't uncommon. We think of it as being strange now, but back then it wasn't. It kind of started with the Anglo-Saxons and pretty much finished with Joan of Arc,
Hmm.
who incidentally might have been a survival of the Knights Templar. She may have been part of that. There's
Interesting.
just little hints that the Templars are involved in the background there.
Yeah, interesting, man. So these Templars, the original nine,
Yeah.
would they be like the best of the best fighters, like
Um,
our SAS kind of guys now that are just like top? Or
Well, you could. There's two ways of looking at it. Number one, they're nobles, so they've got all the kit. They've got the money. They can afford it. They can have chainmail that fits and proper plate armor, and everything's tailored. And so they're clearly tooled up right because they've got the money to do it. Um, Eventually, the Knights Templar grow into the world's first standing army. They are, as you rightly say, the SAS. They are, black and white with a red cross. And if you see that coming at you, you're in trouble because these guys are professional soldiers. They are professional fighters, and that is true right from the very beginning. I mean, for nine guys to decide to say to the entire Islamic world, if you come anywhere near us, we'll kill you all, is a bit of a sweeping statement. But that's what they're saying by saying, leave our pilgrims alone, leave them alone. Once you get past 1127, they start to proportionately increase. But that might be more of a paper shuffling exercise because, of course, by then they actually exist. They have a rule. They've been approved by the Pope. They can raise charitable funds. They can own property. They can do this, that, and the other. In practice, everyone that joined the order gave all the property to the order. They also invented the traveller's check. So every time you put some money into the order, you could travel for miles and miles and miles and get it back out again at the other end. But
interesting.
there was like a 10% charge. Keep doing that for 330 years, and you're going to have a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah. They've kept that going.
Oh yeah. That. I mean, that was their undoing. Really, they became so phenomenally rich that they became a threat to the rulers of Europe. They were quite a threat. I mean, for example, the King of France, King Philippe, he wanted to get rid of them because he owed them 2/3 of his money and 2/3 of his land against debt.
Wow.
Against debt, so he was the guy ultimately that made all the accusations in 1307 and got them all. Friday the 13th of October, 1307, got them all
Re-
arrested. That's where it comes from. That's where the Friday the 13th comes from.
really
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
interesting.
over the whole of France, they arrested about 500 Templars because on Thursday the 12th, someone had tipped them off. So, like this massive Templar navy, which was a huge navy, just sailed out of northern France, never to be seen again. Which is
Wow.
interesting. When they sailed under black flags with a white cross on. And as soon as they'd sailed off, they swapped that cross for two bones and a skull.
Whoa. They
So
turn into pirates.
they're the first officially outlawed pirate navy. That's what they are. They're the very first one,
Wow.
and that's in 1307. So there we go.
Wow, man. You're blowing my mind already, brother. It's amazing. So, do we know that? So, when the Templars first began, do we know how many pilgrims they were protecting?
There were quite a lot of pilgrims going at that point. I mean, the whole purpose of the First Crusade
Mm.
was sort of from about the 600s onwards, the Islamic world had put a close down on Jerusalem. They clamped down on it. So it's very difficult for Christians to do a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. So the idea of the crusade was to lift that blockade. It was to open it up again so that pilgrims could go there again. So the sort of trickle of pilgrims that were going there in the 1000s began to increase in the 1100s. So there were more of them. So they went from numbering, a few thousand, they started to creep into five figures, 10,000, maybe at its peak, you could expect 20, 30,000 pilgrims, through a year. Um, and they all went to different places, of course. They didn't all head for Jerusalem because you could pilgrim all over the Holy Land. That's where you could go. But the Templars only managed to keep that going up to the 1300s. By the time the last crusade failed, they were kicked out in something like 1294, 95, and that was it. They were out of a job. So they end up floating off into Europe and into the islands in the Mediterranean, and they do work there protecting the people in those areas.
Interesting.
Same job, different place.
Yeah. Interesting. So, do we know how far the Templars stretched? Was it all around the world?
Well, officially, it's all around the Mediterranean. So I presume they got into North Africa, and then into the east, into the Holy Land, and areas around there. However, for Templars, what you need to read is Normans, because that's what they are. They're Norman knights. For Normans, you need to read Vikings, because that's where they come from. 2/3 of the army, for example, on the First Crusade wasn't noble knights. It was gangs of Vikings, mercenaries that had been hired for the crusade. So bearing that in mind, we know the Vikings got to Greenland. and parts of North America. So,
Hmm.
as I say, the evidence now is starting to show the potential for the Templars to have done the same, um, possibly even as far as South America. So the Atlantic wasn't, it wasn't a barrier to them. They could go across there. We know that because there's loads of people actually who've gone across there. The Irish monks went across there, way, way before Columbus. There's tons of stuff in America that unofficially exists. Um, I mean, one of the good examples, everyone talks about Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, which the whole structure went up after the Templars were dissolved. But the St. Clair family were quite clearly involved with the Templars. You can tell that from the iconography, the history, etc. When they built Rosslyn Chapel, into one of the window arches, there's a depiction of corn on the cob, which comes from America. And it's dated something like 1240 something, 1247, this window. And it's
Interesting.
and it's got sweet corn, round the window. So there is evidence, and over in America, there's a depiction of a knight, the Wexford Knight. He's on a rock in Massachusetts, carved in. There's a tower as well that they've argued is a windmill, but it looks more like a sort of a castle tower with arches all the way around it. That looks like a Norman tower. And now they're pulling all sorts of things up. There's all kinds of things being found out there.
Yeah.
Um, so
Fascinating, man. Because it's like what we were saying before, our history is it's so
yeah.
tainted, and it's quite controversial to say that the Vikings got to the US before Columbus and things like that. I mean, it used to be. I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah,
it's quite it's
we
quite a new thing that we can just say that
yeah,
yeah, that's what it
yeah.
was.
It's only in our lifetime that the archaeology has backed that up.
Yeah,
So
which is wild.
what we always suspected has ended up proving true.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, I mean, one of the obvious questions is, I mean, this is a great one. Columbus. Everybody raves about Columbus. When he sailed over there with his three ships, the three ships he sailed in had Templar crosses on the sails. He is a Templar family, and his father was known to have associations with the Catholic Church and with Templars. So the next question is, where did he get his map from? Because he clearly knew where he was going, you know?
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. And it right that he didn't actually get to as we see the US now. Like he was somewhere before the US. Is that right? I read something about that the other day. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't know for certain.
Hmm.
I have heard an interesting story about people going over there to settle, which I think comes from the island that one of the cities is on. Might be New York, possibly. But anyway, when they first went over there to settle, um, they got off the boat, and this chieftain it might have been Columbus. He's met by a chieftain, and the chieftain basically is very white skinned, very light skinned, doesn't look at all Native American. And this chieftain walks over to him and in understandable Irish asks him if he's brought beer like the other white men. That's somewhere. It's in the history books. It's one of those. Oh, I've not heard that before. It's one of those strange accounts. So there's
Wow.
definitely a crossover. There's definitely a transatlantic crossover going back a long
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Beer unites the world, man.
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, I'm again, I read a lot of things, and again, it's my bad because I go on social media and I believe all these things. Has President Trump actually, he's actually given a day to when the Vikings first came to America? Is that right? Again,
Well,
I read a lot of
I
things.
I I haven't heard that one, and I do.
Okay.
I like yourself. I tend to follow it.
Hmm.
But we know that in the 11th century, which is in the 1000s, at Lonsdale Meadows in Greenland, this site, they had a settlement there. We know that, and that's dated from, carbon dated archaeological remains. The big thing is to, if anybody's really interested in this, dash out and buy a book that was written in the 1970s called America BC, and it's written by a chap called Barry Fell. And the minute it was published, it was banned in America. You couldn't get it. I've seen copies on Amazon and things for over 200 quid. But if you look around, get yourself a second-hand old battered one, you'll pick it up reasonably cheap. You get it for under 20 quid. And that lists everything in the 1970s up to that point that had been discovered in America, which includes Phoenician, Egyptian, prehistoric, Bronze Age, you name it, everything. There's just tons of it, absolutely tons of
Yeah.
it.
Wow.
Um,
And they banned it.
they banned it.
It's always been the same, man.
Yeah, because
They
it
don't.
just didn't fit the American narrative, you know.
Wow. Yeah, because there's something else that I've been reading a lot recently about the Egyptian artifacts
Mm,
that are being found in the US,
yeah.
and that's just mind blowing, man.
Well,
I mean,
well, the latest one is somebody's had a Roman tombstone come up in their back garden. Well,
ye-
The Romans are not supposed to have been in America, but this is a Latin marble Roman tomb slab. And the other one that always blows everybody's mind is flipping Curse of Oak Island. You
yes,
know, I mean,
yeah,
they've got 2,000 years of stuff on there. You know, some of it's imported, it's come in with other people, but there seems to be a basic core of stuff
yeah,
starting in the medieval times, starting in the 1200s, and going from there. You know,
yeah, man.
yeah,
I know the world's always been connected, and it's very much connected now because social media, the internet,
yeah,
like we're all pretty much we can all be together at all times, anywhere in the world. Like, that's how it is now. But I
yeah.
do really believe that our world was a lot more connected than they like to think it was like 1,000 years ago, you know? And
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the classic one is I mean, I very often mention this that, you know, over here in this country, we've got the copper mine on the Great Orme at Llandudno. You can fingerprint copper. That copper has been, that type of copper, that exact fingerprint has been found in Egypt. So they were exporting copper from the Great Orme into Egypt in pharaonic times. So you're way in the BC period, you know,
yeah,
2000 BC. And then coming the other way, there's a lot of iron in Egypt. There's a lot of iron ore and stuff. Well, the ingots of iron have been found in Germany with the Pharaoh's stamp on. So, you know,
wow,
it's going in both directions. The way I look at it is if you've got water, if there's a way of putting a boat onto water and you can sail, not only is that the safest way of doing it if you understand the weather and navigation, because you're not going to get attacked. And the pirates, you know, really struggled back at this point. So you can get stuff across from one place to another. Everywhere there's a river or a bit of ocean, that's where we could go. It's like the M6 motorway, you know what I mean? You
hmm
can get stuff in both directions. And they did, you know, they
yeah,
did.
wow, man. I'm going a little bit off topic here.
No, no, because the Templars were the same. So you're actually on topic.
Yeah.
That's
What?
why they had. That's why they had an enormous navy. So did the Hospitallers. They had a massive navy. The Knights of Malta and Rhodes. They had a massive navy. You know. So you
Mhm.
bang on topic. Actually, it's really important because import and export was vital to these people. You know, Knights Hospitaller, for example, exported sugar. So they were like,
Wow,
"Yeah, we're really popular." Yeah.
wow. What are your thoughts on like Tataria and things like that?
Whoa, that's a
I know,
whole other
I know, I'm
subject.
sorry.
I've got to be honest, as an archaeologist, I'm also a geologist qualified. So I look at that and I think most of it, 99% of it, is nonsense. It's CGI'd, it's misinterpreted, and most of it's made up. The Tartaria that you see on maps, yeah, it existed. It was southern Russia, you know, before the Tsars. You know, it's pre-Tsar period Russia. So there was an area, and there was a whole race referred to as Tartars. They existed, which was a kind of a slang term for the Pazyryks and the Scythians, you know, the horse-mounted warriors. And to some extent the Mongolians as well. They were referred to by that label. But again, unless you were alive at the time, we're still on topic. We're still talking about a subject here. Unless your mindset is the same as the period when that information was written down, well, you can make anything you like out of it, and
hmm
people do.
hmm
And Tartaria, unfortunately, it's if you want a conspiracy, it's false information that has now started coming out to cover the fact that we could have had an ancient pre-flood civilization. That's very possible. You know, things like Mu, Atlantis, Lemuria, you know, that went down and very clearly went down. And the evidence is starting to come out now to support that. You know, cometary impact, meteorites, etc., tidal waves, you know, all that sort of stuff. So the evidence is there, and what Tartaria is doing is it's blurring that. It's covering it with fog, you know. But I go back a lot further, and as an archaeologist, I'm a huge fan of Atlantis.
hmm
No problem at all with, you know, some continent breaking up, drifting apart, you know, civilizations going down, and then you have this ring of very similar stuff all around the world. You got stretched heads on one side, you've got stretched heads over there. These guys with the big skulls. You've got pyramids over there, you've got pyramids over there. And so on. Writing over there, same over there. Pottery, same over there. It kind of goes on and on and on.
Hmm.
And that looks like to me the survival of a previous civilization. That's what it looks like. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
shoot, it's a duck.
yeah. Fascinating, man. I mean, I do think that you're right. Conspiracies are thrown on top of conspiracies to
Mm,
cover things up, muddies the water, gets everyone arguing, and
yeah.
and and I think you're right there, and I think that like it makes it even more confusing.
Oh yeah.
It's confusing enough as it is with the
Yeah.
straight facts that we've got, but then you're throwing in all these other different ideas and concepts, and we're like, what the heck? And people are fighting about it. It gets crazy. But
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's probably what they want as well. They want us fighting and not agreeing and then we won't get to the straight facts because we're all at each other's throats trying to prove our points. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it as well, man.
Well, I think the archaeological contribution is archaeologists mainly deal with physical remains, physical objects, physical facts. So that's a great place to start,
Hmm.
And then on top of that, you've got the academic side of it, which builds on top. You can join the dots, if you're open-minded enough, you can join the dots.
Hmm. So when did the Templars first start appearing in like in the UK? Was it straight?
Um, Probably after 1127. I mean, basically, when Hugh de Payens came across Europe and into the UK, it would appear that he was heading for Scotland. He talked to the king at the time. I can't remember who it was, 1127. Not sure who the king was at that point. Might have been one of the Henrys. But he got on really well. He had a really good relationship with the barons and with the rulers. And he worked his way up Britain, getting various people to pledge support and money and physical property, which is where things like Norton Priory came in, and the barons of Halton. And then he carried on up to Scotland. I can't remember what the king was again. I think it was a Malcolm up there or a David. Anyway, he had a good relationship with that king as well. And he had the same response right across Europe because the idea of what he was selling, the idea of having permanent warrior monks, that idea started with the Chaldees. It started back in sort of 300 AD, at the end of the Roman era, because they were monks that carried swords, early Christian monks. And it just went from there. So he expanded on that idea, and he sold it very, very well, and it just grew and grew and grew. Through the 1100s, they had tremendous sort of uptake till you get to sort of when you get to the Third Crusade and you've got Richard the Lionheart, and you've got all that happening, Well, Richard's a member of the order. The Plantagenets end up being a member of the order. One of the Henrys, one of the King Henrys, is a member of the order, and so on. So it gets massive approval, and that's why it's able to expand, And goodness only knows how many knights there were at its height. There would have been tens of thousands of them.
Hmm.
Because eventually the Vikings fade out and the Crusades end up being, almost exclusively knights. By sort of the Third Crusade, that's where we're at.
Hmm. Interesting, man. So the Templars obviously started getting too much power around the world and were kind of taking over.
Um, well, they didn't have the chance to take over because actually it's a misnomer to think they were the only order of knights. There's lots of orders at this point. Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, Knights of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Knights of Lazarus who are lepers. So if they turn up with a big green cross, you shuffle away from them because they're contagious. Templars, Knights Hospitallers, Teutonic Knights, Knights of the Fleur de Lis, so on and so on. It just keeps going. There's all these different orders. The Templars just happen to be, I think they end up being the second biggest. They are the biggest in some respects, in terms of military and money and property and stuff like that. But the Knights Hospitaller have got the drop on them, slightly ahead of them. You know what I mean? When the Templars are dissolved, they hand everything they own over to the Knights Hospitaller because they literally went next door to each other. One is, well, they're both warriors, they're both fighters, but one is devoted to, healing and medical stuff and that side of things, whereas the other one is devoted to money and property and transactions and trade. Both of them are sworn to poverty, though. So it's not individual power and authority and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
Like you say, it functions like the SAS. Both of them are members of a huge organization, well established, well funded, well recognized, with its own constitution and its own ceremonies.
Hmm.
Mm.
Interesting, man. So when was they taken out? When was the Templars like
Um,
and what was the main reasons?
well, by the end of the 1200s, by the time they start to fade, there's been I can't. People disagree over how many crusades. There was definitely eight. One, two, and three were reasonably successful. Three's famous because Saladin was involved. So if you watch Kingdom of Heaven, that movie, that's set in the Third Crusade. And Saladin and Richard had a reasonably good working relationship as two leaders of two enormous armies. By the time you get into the 1200s, though, Eighth Crusade, Ninth Crusade, Tenth, I think that some people say there's 11, some people say there's 13. All of those later crusades fail, and by 12, I think it's 1247, the fall of Acre, which is one of the big cities on the coast that was owned and run by Templars, that falls to an enormous army, Muslim army, that just run across it. The whole then of the entire of the Holy Land is back in Islamic control. It's back under Muslim control. So then the Knights, you get this saying to drink like a Templar, because they used to turn up in bars and pubs and all over the place, full regalia, moaning about how great the time was back then. Oh, we used to do this, that, and the other. And they were useless, that they didn't really have a function. So they were useful elsewhere. They made themselves useful in Europe and around the Mediterranean. But once you start to then tip into the 1300s, the financial side of it and the political side of it starts to undermine what they're doing. And that's where Philippe the Fair of France, King Philippe, puts his foot down and says, right, I've had enough. I owe these jokers a shed load of money. The only way I'm going to get out of this is to get rid of them. So he writes up this list of accusations. He actually gets rid of the existing pope and puts a pope in that's actually his mate, and gets this pope to say, right, we're going to have a trial. Let's go along with all these accusations, which you can find. There's translations of those accusations, things like spitting on the cross and worshipping a severed head and all that kind of nonsense, all kinds of weird stuff, which you can make sense of now, but back at the time it sounded really heretical, because unless you would be on the screen, you didn't know what went on. You see, so anything's possible. So, like I say, 1307, Friday the 13th, they had this, massive attack on all of the preceptories in France. Mostly they got like two old guys and a dog, because everybody knew what was coming, so they all ran. The trial then dragged on till about 1314, and the guy, Geoffrey de Charnay, and another chap who were in charge of the Templars at the time, got burnt at the stake in an island in the middle of the River Seine. And it's interesting because I think it's de Charnay that actually says, right, I curse the current pope and I curse the current king. They will see us in hell before the end of the year. Pope and king were dead before the end of the year. It's known as the Templar curse. It's quite famous.
Whoa.
And that's in 1314. But then the Templars don't come to an end, because, like, over in Britain, over here, King Edward first, second, and third, those three Edwards really like them. So it's like 11, sorry, it's 13, what would it? 1334 is when the Edward the Third finally says to them, I think it's time you kind of, if you haven't already, it's time you shuffled off, which they did. And they went into Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, because then they're out the reach of the Pope. Any land that doesn't have papal control, they can go to. Well, that's true right across Europe, everywhere. Look at the Swiss flag, red cross on a white background, and that's where all the banking ends up, things like that. And a lot of them broke up into little groups. They started serving as mercenaries. And then you've also got to consider that there were a lot of people that weren't arrested, like female knights, neophytes, people that have been chosen to join the order but haven't yet graduated, all the service staff. So everybody that's running all the preceptories, everybody from cooks and people that work with horses, and, they're still around. And then what about all the female knights? There's no record of them ever going after the female knights. So the basic infrastructure is still there by the middle of the 1300s. And then you start getting rebranding. I mean, this country's a good example, because Edward's like, Right, we'll have Order of the Garter. Let's have an order called Order of the Garter. Oh, let's do another one called Knights of the Round Table. Yeah, we'll do that one as well, you know. And they all start popping up like this with new names all over Europe. But you know what they are? They're Templar mercenaries. They've just rebranded. And then in the back of my mind, I've got this little ticking thing that says, okay, by 1380, the Catholic Church was saying it was a bad idea that we dissolve them. So what's to stop them bringing them back? You know, they all just, and then they can come back again. Um, so that's kind of where you end up with a situation as it is today. It's probably worth bringing that in now. There are some orders which are Catholic, and to the best of my knowledge, they now have the Knights Templar. They meet at St. Paul's. They go and meet in the Vatican. There's a lot of them. So the Templars now, you've got Catholic Templars and offshoot orders of the Catholic Templars. Then in the middle, you've sort of got independent orders. So if you Google on the internet or whatever, you'll probably get about 20 odd different versions that are in America alone. But the independent orders are all over Europe. They're everywhere. The order I'm a part of, which is based in Wales, the current Grand Master is Grand Master of 18 different other countries. So there's 18 different orders out there scattered across Europe that are now united. So that's quite a substantial body of independent Templars. The reason I say independent is they're not connected to the Catholic Church or the third category, which is Masonic Templars. The Freemasons have Knights Templar as one of their degrees. So, Scottish Rite, I think it's about 28th or whatever degree, and English Rite's about 17th or 18th. But that's where you see a lot of Masonic influence, and that's only been going about 350, 400 years. So it's a new organization recreated, as indeed are all the other Templars. They're resurrected. They've been brought back, as it were.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of pedigree. It points back to them. Beginning of the 1300s, they're dissolved. End of the 1300s, they're back again.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing.
And they're still going.
Well, yeah, technically, yeah, they are technically still going. There is another bit of a postscript as well, that the list of accusations from the 1300s that were levelled against the Templars, when the Catholic Church was having trouble 300 years later with the witches, they wheeled out the same list of accusations without even changing them. So the first persecutions, the first burnings are the blokes, and they're the Templars, and then 300 years later, they go after the witches using exactly the same list of legal accusations. How crazy is that?
That is wild.
It's nuts, isn't it?
Wow, man.
Yeah.
And I know I might have got this, but was the first witches accusations in Essex in the UK?
I'm not exactly sure where the accusations were first used,
Hmm.
but any of the trials, any of the quote legal trials, Pendle witch trials, even going across to the states,
Hmm.
Salem and all that. The
Yeah.
basic legal framework for that comes from the accusations that were leveled against the Templars. It's I can't remember the name of the book that was done by the same guy, the same king that did 1611, King James,
Hmm.
1611 Bible, wrote a Malus Maleficarum. There you go, I've remembered it, which was the book that made the accusations against the witches. So most of them go back to that. But
Interesting.
he was totally aware. He was completely aware of what had gone on in the past in terms of accusations, and he absorbed the Templar accusations into that.
Wow, man.
So, I mean, the Templars have literally, in so many ways, changed the world.
Hmm.
They were part of, if you like, the proto-Renaissance. They came at the beginning. They gave us because they brought stuff back from Crusades. So they brought back Gothic architecture, advanced medicine, mathematics, astronomy, navigation. And they had the money and the power and what have you to use that. They could make use of all of that. So they kind of fired up, if you like, the start of what we now know as the Renaissance.
Man. So what is the role of like a Templar now? What would you say is in today's
Um,
world? What is it, just keeping like the history, or what is the role? That might be a difficult question.
No, it's not too difficult. I'm just trying to think of a general, because you've got three categories. Okay, so yes, I think you're right about the Catholic Templars. I think that's a matter of preservation. Also, a matter of kind of digging their heels in and going, "See, we told you we were innocent all along." It's one of those kind of things. So I think they are very similar to and behave the same as the original Templars because that's what they are. There's no problem there. The middle category, if you look at independent Templars, the vast majority of them that are not associated with either religion or masonry are there for a specific charitable purpose. And some of them can be a bit weird. There were some Templars that came out of the Victorian era that were against alcohol. They were, that kind of, oh, we're the good Templars. We don't do that. Another was a pilgrimage trust. So they were trying to get pilgrims from Europe to Jerusalem, which is what the Templars used to do. A vast majority of them are charitable organizations. If you then move into Freemasonry, Freemasonry itself develops individuals. It's a developmental system. So people that are working their way through the degrees, it's advancing them. It's moving people on. So it becomes a little bit more personal. That having been said, certainly in the UK and probably in America, they are the number one biggest charitable organisation there is. They put, I think it was about 33.4 million into the NHS. They pumped that in last year. There'd be no
Wow.
NH, there'd be no NHS if it wasn't for Freemasons because they are this big charitable organisation. Made up largely of the sort of middle class to upper class business people. Um, and again, it's a fellowship. That all three of them are fellowships, but the Freemasons tend to get people together who normally would end up sitting in an office somewhere on their own, wondering who to talk to. So that's kind of the functions of the three. There are
Interesting.
some there are some wacky ones in America. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan use the Klan badge is the Templar cross. So there are some real extremists out there. So I'm not massively fond of American Templars, the ones I've encountered. But all over the rest of the world, the rest of Europe, all three of them seem to be okay.
Hmm.
They seem fine. Obviously, the Catholic ones as well, they're mostly monastic. They have a monastic rule. So technically they're monks, but, monks of the 21st century. The
Hmm.
middle lot obviously aren't, and the other lot are Masons. So that's where we're at.
Interesting, man. Interesting. Your knowledge is incredible. I don't know how you do it, but it's incredible. So literally last week, I believe, was it
Yeah.
last week that you had a Templar weekend?
Yeah, I mean, technically, if you're using Templar language, you could call it a conclave, but it wasn't truly a conclave because it was open to members of the public. It was at Garway in Herefordshire. Garway is, I mean, there's several Templar things down there. Abbey Doors down there, Kilpeck Church is down there. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's like a half an hour's drive out of Hereford, and all you get is fields. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. So I was a bit hesitant. I was like, how's this going to work out in practice? Blow me if it didn't sell out. There were people coming from everywhere, Cumbria and all sorts of places. They were coming from everywhere for it. And it was phenomenally successful. I've got to say, because I'm connected with the organisers, but at the same time, I'm not doing the organisational side of it. I have to say they did a really good job of it, mainly because they had a nice blend of the physical aspects. So, like, there's a lot of history to say that the Templars, for example, designed the tarot as a memory system for the monarchs of Europe back in the 1300s. That's how it appears to have started. Well, there was a guy there doing a talk on tarot. Two of us did history and mysteries. On both days, there was this expose from a lady that works with Gaia. So she's a television producer. She did a couple of presentations on Templars in South America, which none of us knew anything about. It's like, wow. So overall, and I know for a fact there was Masonic Templars there. I also know there were independent Templars there. Unfortunately, due to illness, the two guys that were coming from the Vatican didn't make it, which is a real shame. But the best outcome, this is the best outcome of all of it, is we're going to do the same thing in the same place around about the same dates next year. So if
Awesome.
if anybody wants to become a part of that, it's oh, what was it? Knights Templar Conference 2026. I've put the link on my Facebook anyway. You can come and
Okay.
find it.
Awesome,
Uh,
man. If you send that to me, I'll add it to this show description as well, so people can click it right now.
I'll have a
Interesting.
go. Yeah, I'll have a go. I'll see if I can get it to you. But Garway, Garway, Garway Templar Conference.
Yeah.
You'll find it. That's how to get to it. And you can buy tickets for next year. They came on sale almost immediately. I mean, the
Yeah.
little promoter lady who's brilliant was running around the conference going, "I'll do another one. I'll do another one. We'll do it again next year.
Awesome, man.
Sign up."
Yeah. I'm
Um,
gonna try and get down, man. That'd be amazing.
well, the spiritual atmosphere is what everyone came away raving about because
Hmm.
somehow we were the right people at the right time in the right place. People were going away saying, "Look, I've done mind, body, spirits and stuff like that for years, and I've never been to a conference like this one." It was absolutely mind blowing,
Interesting.
and
And as you
a real blend of stuff. It went
yeah,
in all directions. Yeah,
and as we was talking before we started recording, you said
yeah,
there wasn't many pictures taken, which I think
no,
in today's world it means that people were so engaged,
yeah.
they weren't worried about their phones, their cell
Yeah, I,
phones.
I never saw a mobile phone out the whole time I was there, except
See,
when
that
people were,
is wild.
out in the restaurant doing food and tea and stuff like that, or wandering around outside. They had the phones, but actually in the body of the event, I've not seen any photos reposted or anything like that.
Wow. And nobody was told you're not allowed to take pictures or anything?
No, no, they were perfectly allowed to. There was a lot of people taking photographs of what was on the screen,
Hmm.
which is like, information. So they were recording the information side of it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It ended up not really being about personalities. It wasn't about who was on the stage,
Hmm.
because the Templars took centre stage. It was about information,
Yeah.
and the whole power of the event, which was just amazing, absolutely amazing event.
That's awesome.
So
Awesome, man.
October next year, I think it's the 17th and 18th of October next year. We're doing it again. The hall will hold about double. I think there's about 70 people there, so the hall will hold up to about 100, 140. So we're hoping for a real, massive, massive lockout there, and it's in Garway Village. The church is like on the other side of the road, so we're on top of a Templar site.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow, man.
yeah,
Interesting stuff. So you're a Templar now.
yeah,
You're still a
yeah.
part of the how often would you have meetings? How does it work? Like as
Okay. Well, it's the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. That's the full title, which is SMO, whatever that is when it comes out as as initials. It's loosely based around the night shop in Conway. So if you want to, anybody wants to join up, go and visit the night shop in Conway. Um, Toby is there. Toby's one of our sort of leaders, if you like. There's a few other leaders. I think Toby might have retired actually. I think he retired last year. But anyway, that's the group I'm a part of. It's a real mixed group. People from all sorts of backgrounds, Masonic, religious, non-religious, non-Masonic. Everybody kind of joins it. Um, there's 2 meals a year, so we raise money for charity. So we have two banquets, as a rule, one at the beginning, one at the end. And then if you want to get involved in the running of the organisation in between, they take over churches, which is funny because it's exactly what the Templars used to do. They used to just pick a church and go and take over the church, and that was it. And whoever was in charge had to let them in. The same kind of thing applies now. We can apply to any church anywhere, and they have sort of it's not really a ritual. It's a ceremony. It's all about ceremony, for people to join the order. So you get your cross, your regalia, and what have you. And then once a year they have a conference, and that moves. One year it's in Wales, next year it's in England. So it moves around different locations. So it can be quite a busy calendar. They've come back with a vengeance after lockdown. We
Mhm.
didn't do anything for like years, and they really have you know come back with a vengeance.
Interesting. Keeping the history alive, man.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, brother. Mark, you've taught me so much again, man. There's so much information. I mean, we're just over an hour, but there's so much
Yeah.
information there, and it's yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you were wondering if we'd make an hour.
Yeah, I said to you before, are we going to be able to do an hour?
Well,
and,
I'm
and, I-
not.
and I
There's
can
so much
imagine
stuff I
we
haven't
could
even
probably
done.
do, yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine we could probably do another 4 hours on this,
yeah. If you do a part
you
two
know?
or something, but
Yeah,
yeah, but like you
absolutely.
say, there's a load of other stuff we need to tackle as well. So
Yeah, oh, 100%, man.
yeah,
I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, man, for coming back. And as I say, hopefully there's hours and hours and hours more of you on Let's Get Freaky as well, because I know the Freaky fam absolutely love you.
well, it's coming.
Yeah. And you got the show coming back on the TV, which is amazing. That's going to be cool as well. We're looking forward to that.
Well,
Can you?
I'll tell you what I'm going to say.
Mhm,
They've sent me a link for a trailer, okay, and it's not an official trailer. It's just an edit, like a rough edit.
mhm.
I'm going to get permission to put that on my Facebook. So if anybody wants to get the flavour of where it's going, at some point in the next week, when I've got the link established,
Yeah.
I'll copy it. I'll copy it, and people can have
Oh,
a quick
awesome,
view
man.
of what's coming.
Oh,
I mean, we don't have a broadcast date for it or anything like that yet, but as soon as I've got it, I will put it out.
awesome, awesome.
Yeah,
When you share it on Facebook, I'll reshare it as
yeah,
well if that's
yeah,
cool. And
yeah. It's cool.
but where can people find you if they want to reach you right now? Where's the best place for them to
Right,
get?
okay. I'll do the little advert, mini advert. And it's really simple because I don't do electronics and social media and stuff. Three things. Number one, as I say, you want to come and find out what I'm up to. You want to see the latest stuff, and that's Facebook. Come and find me on Facebook, where you can also message me on Messenger. If you want to get product, if you're looking for books or whatever, every book I've ever done is available on Amazon. So just type my name into Amazon and see what you get. I think there's about 8 or 9 of them still available. So go and have a look at that one. And if you want back catalog, excuse me, back catalog, so you want television programs, other interviews, things like that, outtakes and what have you, there's a ton load of stuff on YouTube. So go and have a look on YouTube. So that's it. Facebook, Amazon, YouTube. They're the
Awesome.
three.
Awesome, man. And the links will be in the show description so
Okay.
people can go right now as well. Brother, thank you so much, man. I'm excited to do it again soon. I'm actually, once we finish recording, I'm going to try and book you in straight if you don't
Yeah,
mind
yeah, all right. Yeah, we'll do that.
to
Yeah,
do another one soon. I really
yeah.
appreciate your time again, man. And
Absolute
your
pleasure.
knowledge is unbelievable. And thank you very much.
Thanks
Guys,
for having me.
thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. If you have, share it where you can. That is a great way to support the podcast. And we'll be back very soon for more freaky conversations. In the meantime, stay safe and keep it freaky. Bye for now. Thank you very much, sir.